Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashrathi, and this is the Eve Universe Show. We are coming at you this Tuesday, talking about all of the changes coming to TQ, but also to Singularity, as well as the very exciting event that got everyone's attention this morning. I immediately, as soon as the events happened in Tatsun, I knew that A, I'd be talking about it today, and B, I wanted to have Arsia Elkin with me in order to discuss it. So thankfully, today we have Arsia with us from Matari, someone who should need no introduction, but just in case. Arsia, why don't you tell us about yourself? Oh, hold on. Now I'll tell you about yourself.
All right.
I caught it faster this time.
Yeah, just mute me. It's fine. I'm not offended. Anyway, I'm an Eve player of about 11 years, starting back in 2010. And the entire time I've been a role player, and most of that time I've been like a PvP-focused role player who focuses on getting my content from the story and the world of Eve guiding my actions, and the role play behind all of the interactions that the various players do. I mean, that was a kind of a weird way of phrasing it, but basically I'm a PvP role player.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, so you really are one of those examples. You know, when I first joined Eve, if you asked about role-playing, people were like, oh, well, role-playing is this niche thing that, like, a few people do, and they're kind of just nerdy people, and they're, you know, this idea that, like, role-players aren't really good PvPers or whatever, but, like, Matari, and you in particular, are have really changed the narrative on that and proven them wrong. And in fact, there's a lot of PvP history in role playing.
There's a lot of role players who are excellent PvPers. Like during the invasions where we are on opposite sides, the Edencom backbone was pretty much the roleplay PvP block who showed up in the liminalities and the low sec systems, and even managing to flip Arshat back from liminality to Fortress. Role players, a lot of people do kind of frame role players as, oh, they don't play the game right, they're not strong, but like role players have been involved in a lot of the larger PvP engagements over the years of Eve. I mean, it was a role player that got like that first tackle of Asakai, right? So role players have been in tournaments and out roaming, have been in alliances in low, null, and wormhole space fighting people. Role players are not pushovers by any stretch of the imagination.
Absolutely not. In fact, some of the oldest alliances in the game are, you know, lore aligned, and therefore have been pretty famous role players over the years. But one of the things that I always hear that I find frustrating personally is this idea that, like, oh man, I wish CCP would get back to doing things with the lore again. And yet all the time I've seen these kinds of events happening where, like, the Ammar started attacking the Minmatar militia sites, the fighting over Floswin, the issues with Intaki, everything involving the Deathglow events and all that stuff. I feel like there has been quite a bit going on, especially in the last 2 to 3 years. And to the point where the player bases call for, like, man, I really wish that they would get around to doing something. I think today is a really good sign that they have been, and that this is, you know, it's time to start paying attention. Would you agree with that?
So I think that there was a period of time for a lot of years where it was really quiet on the lore front, but I think the last 3 or 4 years, it's actually been there's actually been quite a lot of, like, lore content to interact with. Maybe it's not, like, evenly spaced and it comes in bursts, but there's been a lot of events that have led to not only major wars between RP groups and wars between RP groups and non-RP groups, but all sorts of things that have been around to interact with, and the main problem has been not that they haven't been there, but that they haven't been like promoted and pushed
Right.
and put in the limelight and given the visibility that it needs. Like things like the in-world news aren't even on the new world like CCP news site. They made like a special news
Yeah.
site recently, and
Yeah,
the
they
world
redo
news
the news
isn't
site. They
on
don't
it.
even add the world news to it. Why?
Like we had like three world news articles today? Did we get a fourth?
We had
Right?
three.
Because
We had
there's
three.
like three before the attack, during the attack, and after the attack, right?
Yeah.
And there were dreadnoughts in space in high sec. The second time dreadnoughts have come to Tanoo. Like
Oh.
this system is a hotspot. Yeah, the Blood Raiders dropped a bunch of dreadnoughts in the Lumen Fortizar
Oh, this.
a year and a half ago. Yeah.
So wait, this is the same location as where the Blood Raiders attacked with the dreads.
Yes.
Very
Lumen
interesting.
Fortizar is over the capital planet of the Ammatar Mandate, and the Blood Raider dreads were there to when Alar Chakade was being held on the planet. Alar Chakade is one of the prisoners who escaped today from Innis Ilix,
Right.
and it's
Okay.
all connected.
Okay. Let's take another step back. I feel like we're jumping ahead of ourselves.
Right.
But we're going to start actually with the first news today, and then we're going to work our way backwards to help understand it all. Okay. So, the very first news article from today was, hold on, let me pull it up. It actually had two different things. There's things involving the Caldari protests that are going on, which I believe is also very integral to kind of this buildup that CCP's been working on, but not part of this particular plot so much. So we're going to skip over that one real quick, and hold on, let me see if I can. Woo! Yay! Okay, so I found this was very interesting. This actually happened this morning. So a month ago or so, actually when the monuments came out, so like 2 weeks ago or so, there was an announcement that the Ammar Empress had traveled to the Ammatar Mandate, to the system of Tanoo, to the planet of Tanoo 2, and that she was doing an inspection of the Ammatar Mandate. This is actually comes a year after the Ardashipur had done a tour of the Mandate themselves. So this is the news article from today, previous to the attack. Empress Katsis I summons Privy Council to Ammar Prime following tour of Ammatar Mandate. Dam Torsad, Ammar Prime. Empress Katsis I has summoned the heads of the royal houses of the Ammar Empire to the imperial city of Dam Torsad for a full meeting of the Privy Council. The Ammar Empress recently concluded a tour of the Ammatar Mandate and returned to Ammar Prime last week, accompanied by the royal heir Ariam Ardashipur and the respective diplomatic and military retinues. Observers of the tour of the Ammatar Mandate suggest that Empress Katsis was impressed by the ongoing economic development of the Ammatar Mandate under the leadership of Lord Ardashipur and the Mandate Governor Lord Ekras Salaf. The military readiness and continuing fortification of the Mandate was also said to be, quote, highly satisfactory, end quote, in the imperial court held in the consular palace on Tanoo 2. A number of the loyal, end quote, families of the Ammatar, quote, petty nobility, end quote, had their imperial charters renewed and upgraded, signaling the Lord Salaf's elevation to full holder status will be followed by others in time. Full meeting of the Imperial Privy Council are generally held to discuss a variety of issues relevant to the administration of the Ammar Empire. The aftermath of the Triglavian invasions continue to pose challenges to all of the core empires, with the continued rebuilding of the Ammar Navy and ancillary armed forces likely to feature heavy in their discussions. So, Kattis just toured the Ammatar Mandate, including Tatun 2, in order to see whether or not the ascension of this Ammatarian lord is A-okay.
Warping to Stargate.
Yeah, Lord Ekras Salaf is the Ammatar governor. The in-game description of the Ammatar consulate says the governor is Ammar, but that's not been true for years. Lord Ekras Salaf is the current governor of the Ammatar Mandate, and he answers to Aram Ardashipur because the Ammatar Mandate is part of the Ardashipur military circuit in the Ammar Empire. It does have like the semi-sovereignty where like the Ammatar consulate deals with the day governing, but it is ultimately like a vassal state of the empire under the control of Ardashapur, run day to day by Lord Ekraz Salif, who was the first ethnic Ammatar governor, first ethnic Ammatar noble that was elevated to ennobled.
Holder status.
I think he was made like a holder. In Ammar, the holder class is the class that's allowed to hold slaves, and basically they're allowed to have land and property.
Right.
Because it's a feudal system. Like the nobility owns the land, and commoners and the slave class live on a noble's property. It's like old school European feudalism, but in space with lasers. Right?
Right. So the Ammarian people believe that all of the other people are like fit to serve them, and that there's something uniquely special about the Ammarians. However, the Ammatarians were Matari, which are basically the people that would later go on to become the Minmatar, right? And so when the Ammar were enslaving the Matari people, there was a collection of them that chose to work with the Ammarian lords. Now, there is some pieces to this where they actually it isn't just complete betrayal. That there is a reason why the Ammatar Mandate did this, and it wasn't just to protect themselves.
So
yeah.
So kind of, but all of the Ammatar left are, with maybe some super secret exceptions, they're pretty much loyal to the Ammar Empire, because all the ones who were secretly not loyal went back to the Republic as the Nefantar tribe after the Elder Fleet. Because some years ago, there was another Minmatar fleet that crossed the borders into Derelict and attacked the Ammatar Mandate after it was found that one of the 7 tribes of the Minmatar, there were still some amount of it was the tribe of the Stark Manir that was thought to be extinct. Was found that there were people still remaining from the Stark Manir tribe enslaved in the Ammatar Mandate. The Minmatar had the Elder Fleet go in with the Thucker and the Minmatar. They built it under the cover of night and secretly jumped it in and attacked in the Mandate and went up to the Empire all the way to Sarum Prime. That's when Jamel came back.
Right.
But they recovered all the Stark Manir from the Mandate, and all the people who were there who were not loyal to the Empire pretty much left back and reformed the Nefantar tribe, which brought all 7 tribes of the Minmatar back together in the Republic. So the Ammatar today are generally just Ammar loyal.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. So the Ammatar are actually Matari, the same as the Minmatar, but these guys have chosen to be loyal to the Ammar. And over time, they have gotten more and more privileges within the Empire until, I think last year, finally, one of their own was raised up in this way to become the leader of this area, which is what's prompted these inspections and investigations, or like tours by the Empress and Ardashapur.
Yeah, the whole thing the Ammar do is that they think that they are tasked by God to bring everybody to God, basically. And so they think they are uniquely gifted and noble, but the idea is that they conquer people and put them into slavery, and then basically they breed out the old culture, breed in the new culture, and then free them into the Empire. Like the Nikuni used to be pretty much slaves, and now they're just integrated and mostly considered a free race. Ammatar are generally free, but the other Matari are generally slaves, even though there are obviously free Matari in the Empire. Ones who are freed because of loyalty or good actions or whatnot. It's basically a slow cultural genocide that happens over over generations to kick out the old culture and bring in the new culture in the Empire. The Ammatar generally do about as well as Nikuni in the Empire social standings. A little better off economically, but they face a little more prejudice. So it evens out roughly. The the economically the economic portion is because they're like generally has a better economy than Iridia.
Right.
Right.
So, okay. So today, a lot of that's just set up for what happened. And then the next thing that came down the pike, or actually at the end of this of the same article, we have breaking assault on Innis Lick's Theology Council Law School by Brutor Vanguard mercenaries reported. Is that even pronounced right? Is that L-I? Is that? Oh God.
I think it's Innis Elix. Yeah.
Yeah, Innis Elix. Yeah, I-L-I-X. My bad. Innis Elix Theology Council Law School. So this is actually a different location. This is in Khador, right?
Yeah, it's in Khador space. It's at the Chakade and Zashev, the two prisoners, were being held in the Mandate, and the Khanid complained that it wasn't a neutral place to hold them because the Khanid and the Ammatar don't like each other. There's a lot of friction between those two groups within the Empire.
Right.
So they moved the prisoners because Chakade is a Khanid lord, and Zashiv is a Khanid criminal, and Khanid wanted them moved to a neutral place. So they moved Zashiv and Chakade to a Theology Council location in Innis Elix, specifically held by the Theology Council because Zashiv had already escaped from the Ministry of Internal Order once before.
Right.
And they think he has friends still in the MIO that would bust him out again. It looks like he got out again.
So
This is the guy that I'm just saying. This is the guy that role players paid 200 billion ISK to get turned over to them by the bounty hunters that caught him after he escaped.
Right. Yeah, so that's actually what I was going to jump into, which is that both of these characters have history prior to this, and directly related to Floswin and Tattoon and all that sort of stuff. So we should actually look at each
Tanoo.
of them. Yeah, Tanoo. So we should look at them kind of separately, but we'll start with Orion Zashev because he kind of showed up most recently.
Zashev.
Orlan, thank you.
So Orlan Zashev is a Khanid slaver who is arrested not on Tanoo or Floswin, but back in the Becca.
Right.
Orlan Zashev was caught by the Ministry of Internal Order on the Becca 3. He was an illegal Khanid slaver, basically selling slaves outside of the Empire's protocols to do so. He was arrested by the Ministry of Internal Order, then escaped their custody using friends that he had within the ministry. He was caught by the Sekal bounty hunter, Cecily Ashok, and her crew, and she ransomed him off, auctioned him off on the forums, the official in-character forums. It ended up in a bidding war, and it went to like 190 billion versus 200 billion were the offers from the Ammar and the Minmatar sides. The Ammar paid the 200 billion to this bounty hunter, and she turned over the Zashev to the players, who then turned him over to Lord Sarum.
Right. And then, but there was accusations that Lord Sarum was having him transferred to them just so that way they could use him to perform more slave captures during the Floswin conflict.
There was an accusation by the Scope that he was being used on Floswin to slave. There was an outcry from the loyalists, and then Sarum actually responded saying, "That's ridiculous. He's being held in the Mandate. He's in the." I think that they said he was in Jariza, in the fortress monastery that the Tetramon had there, and wasn't being used as a combatant. But that's the Scope's word versus Serum's word. So
the article from 2019, or November 2019 says, also announces the transfer of House Sorum's custody to the Ammar Mandate to a number of criminals wanted for atrocities carried out by the so-called Vindication Wars with the Minmatar Republic. The notorious slaver Orlan Zashev featured prominently at the head of the list of transfers, putting paid to rumors that House Sorum has paid for the fugitive in charge of alleged slave trafficking operations being planned on Flossiswin 4. The Scope's correspondent noted that Lord Alakar Sorum responded with cold contempt to questions about these rumors. Quote, I find it incredible that any loyal Ammar would waste a moment's consideration on obvious black propaganda being spread by the enemies of the Empire, said Lord Sir Sorum, continuing, quote, nobody has anything to fear from a full and complete reclaiming of any planet by House Sorum. Contrary to the lies told by the Ammar Empire, we are interested in building and renewing societies, not destroying them. As for the traitor and criminal Zashev, he has broken many of our most ancient laws, including the codes of righteous warfare. It is only right that his first punishment be for his heinous atrocities against the imperial subjects and civilians in the Ammatar Mandate. So both of these characters. So that's Orlan Zashev. Cool. Let's talk about our other dude, which is
Alar Chakade.
Yeah, this guy has a lot more history, doesn't he?
All right, so this is the guy that firebombed my character's family.
This is why I couldn't discuss this without anyone besides you. Okay, let's start out. Like, when was the first time we ever heard about...
The first time we ever heard of him was way back in 2015. He was Khan's right-hand man during the Ammar tournament that picked the potential champions for the Team Khanid. He was brought into the limelight because there was a controversy about one of the potential champions being a Blood Raider named a deity. A deity ended up losing. Damascus Kadesh was the Khanid champion, and there was a lot of bickering between Ammar players at the time and Chakade, and an Imperial NPC came in and kind of broke it up, and he disappeared for a couple years till he reappeared right around the time Kaha started and the Blood Raider attacks that were going on.
Right. So hold on. When was that first one? It was, how long ago was that?
2015.
Okay, it's 2015. All right. Jeez, that was, I guess that's a good point. Man, the Empress has been the Empress for a while. All right. Okay, so at that time he was a Baron. Sa Baron Alar Chakade.
Yeah.
And then, so in 2018, he made quite the name for himself by kind of talking a lot of smack, especially during the time that the Ammatar were starting to get more privileges or more, whatnot. He tried to peg the attacks on the Ammatar at the time. He says, we know who's responsible for these acts.
Yeah.
Minmatar rebels, Ammatar traitors, blood cultists. But you say that he's responsible. Why do you feel that he...
So
what happened?
Every time Alar Chakade popped up and talked shit to somebody, that person, something connected to that person's backstory was hit in a news article by Blood Raiders. So, I think the first person to get into a fight with him after he came back was Samara Kerner. And then her family was attacked. And then Gavin Lokri's family was attacked. And Matara Newell's family was attacked. And Arsia Elkin's family was attacked. And Elsabeth Rhiannon's family was attacked. And, everybody who got into a fight with this guy on the forums had their damn families bombed. It was painfully obvious. And then when he was being held in Tanoo, no, actually, this was before he was being held in Tanoo, when the Blood Raiders attacked. But basically, everybody he pissed off, everybody who pissed him off got Blood Raiders sent to their doorstep. And there's a lot of implication that Khanid are by and large doing some shady stuff.
That's fair. Well, he does openly deny it on the forums, just for full record.
And he was arrested in Losses
yeah, we're getting to that.
By the Federal.
We're getting there. Immortal. All right, so 1 second. Okay, so in March of 2020, we have a note in the news saying Khanid Lord Alar Chakad has been elevated to cardinal rank in degree marking consecration of Grand Basilica in Saint Gareth. So at that point in March, he was promoted, which then basically at that point he starts being referred to as Khanid Warlord Alar Chakad. Right?
So Chakade got several promotions over the last few years, and it kind of became like a meme in role player circles where like it seemed so obvious that Chakade was doing all this like terrible stuff, but he just kept moving up and up and up and up until he got on the Theology Council.
Moving to Stargate.
Right? He eventually gets on the Theology Council, and it was just kind of like a meme, and like half of it's probably just Delegate Zero trolling us. But yeah, he got several promotions over the years. He was obviously very, very useful for Khanid, both to build him up and then let him fall as a scapegoat, keeping his own people off his own back. Like, I think Chakade is really just a puppet of King Khanid.
Okay. So that's right, because by like July, by July he's referred to as Duke Alar Chakade. But so
because it wasn't.
Say again.
It wasn't just. I think Chakade was kind of like the idiot in the room, where Khanid was the leader, and then there was the other guy who was always around him that was really quiet. What's his name? The other guy on the Theology Council. It's in the same article that Chakade was elevated to the Theology Council. There was somebody else, and I forgot his name, and he was always around Chakade. God, this is his name I should remember, but basically there's a bunch of like smart Khanid, and Chakade was kind of like the loud guy who they let get built up and take the fall.
Right. Okay. So basically, again, so in March he becomes promoted. By July, he is Khanid Warlord. Sorry, shortly after being promoted, you have Khanid Warlord Alar Chakade broadcast sermons of reclaiming by holy fire on Flotsvin 4, claims supports of teaching of Saint Junip. So you see that he's basically taken. He is one of the military forces operating in Flotsvin 4 during the conflict over the last couple of years. Which
he was sent to Flotsvin as a he's a war clone, so he's not a capsuleer. He's not going to be in a spaceship like us. He's a war clone like what they had in Dust. And so he was sent to Flotsvin 4. He gave those sermons repeatedly and made threats about killing Minmatar with the Black Dagger, which is a symbolic object in the Ammar faith that basically if you stab somebody with a Black Dagger, you're like marking their soul to be sent to hell when they die. You're basically damning them by stabbing them with a Black Dagger, and he used that imagery extensively. There were a bunch of murders on Matari after his threats pretty recently, where people were murdered with Black Daggers, and it just kind of harkens back to Chakade saying he's going to kill Minmatar with Black Daggers.
Right.
He's like violently racist against the Minmatar.
And the Ammatar. So by May,
it's just
by May, he's saying that he's broadcasting to unleash a sea of fire and blood if the city of Jolin Kral is attacked by the Republic. And then I can't remember exactly when he made the actual, like, the literal Black Daggers threat. Oh, here it is. Cardinal Duke Alar Chakade openly threatens to unleash 93,000 Black Daggers across Revel provinces in campaign of terror. And that is actually shortly. That was actually earlier. That was in March. So then, but it didn't really go well for him. What we get is a report by July, I think it was. Hold on, let me find it. Reports from Jolin Kral, the place that he said not to attack, indicates a major uprising took place last night with heavy fighting taking place around key infrastructure. Forces under the command of Khanid warlord Alad Chakade were evidently unable to maintain control of the city's shield generators as the defenses fell later this morning. The SFIVA's Second Army Group subsequently broke through, and although confused reports indicate continuing Ammar resistance, the liberation of Jolin Kral is certain. Large numbers of House Storm troops remain in Port Kuhl, and General Matari is reported to be directing the rearguard action. The status of Duke Alar Chakade is unknown at this time. Hetman General Kenneth Filmar has broadcasted a general communique calling all Ammar forces to surrender or face certain death at the hands of the combined SFIVA/resistance forces. Okay, so now what we have is basically he's like on Floswin, being a warlord, messing people up, probably torturing, helping out that other guy maybe with slave trade, who knows, doing terrible things, saying, everybody, if you guys attack here, the worst things ever will happen to you. And then they attack, and it falls, and he disappears, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't disappear for long.
So,
he shows back up, right?
right. He comes back, and the Tetramon, which is an Ammar group, take him into custody.
Right. So it turns out
on Floswin.
It turns out that the Order of Saint Tetramon, which is one of the high religious orders of the Ammar Empire, and famously was actually outside of the Empire for some time, and was more associated with Khanid Kingdom than the Ammar
They
Empire
were banished
for some time.
and then brought back. They are generally associated with a strict, like, literal adherence to the faith, and they were banished. Under Jamel.
Sorry, you cut out in the middle of that. They were banished under Jamil?
No, they came back into the fold under Jamel.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So Jamil let them back in, and ever since then, they helped officiate that thing, and they've been kind of, feeling out their power base ever since. And here, they have now arrested both. They have now come to possession of both Alar Chakade and this the slaver, right? And they're both being held in Tanoo or Tanoo. What is it again?
Tanoo was Tanoo, but
yeah, they were both being held at Tanoo.
The Chakade, I think the Zeshev was originally being held on in Jariza, which is two or three jumps from Tanoo in the Mandate, where the Tetramon built their fortress monastery. It's like a big church prison.
Right. Okay. So, but either way, both of those guys were under the control of the Order of Saint Tetramon. But then there's been a lot of back and forth as the Theology Council has kind of stepped in and has now said that all this needs to be decided further in, that this is not an Ammatar Mandate issue. This is a Theology Council issue.
So
bring them home.
The Khanid Kingdom said the Ammatar Mandate is not a neutral party in this dispute. And then the Theology Council said, okay, we'll take it. And then took it to not the Mandate, not the Kingdom, but just the Theology Council station in Khador.
Right, which is that
the
other
Theology
system.
Council is the, yeah, exactly.
The Innis Ilix?
Innis Ilix is a system that's coming up in lore before too. Wasn't that where like the Galente Gaia was abducted by the Empire.
I'm gonna have to look into that.
Like way back.
So both of those characters, I remember even we talked about this on Talking Stations when it was announced that he was going to be moved, whether or not you were going to be paying attention to this because you had vested interest in his potential criminal activity. So he was like, especially Alar is really interesting because he was supposedly doing the right thing. He was being an Ammar warlord, helping out with the Ammar and doing Sorum's things, and then suddenly he gets arrested.
I mean, he was fighting on Flossuswin, which is for the Ammar the right thing, but like all the implied connections to the Blood Raiders, like basically everybody knew that he was not doing the right thing. In other ways, even if obviously the Ammar would value the participation in Flossuswin. And by the way, the whole thing with Flossuswin is that it was it stands to mention that this wasn't just news articles being made up in a vacuum. There was player fighting in the skies of Flossuswin, and it is a faction warfare system, and there was ridiculous amounts of incredibly heavy fighting for the months that war took place. That was sparked by a shit post on the forums that I made. So it's just kind of funny how a giant war can like a player war influences the lore like that.
Yeah, well, a big piece of this was the Ammar and Minmatar role player or faction warfare guys conspired to get rid of all of the missions, and so Lord Sorum was like, "Oh hell nah," and got really upset about that.
Yeah, because they basically signed a treaty saying, "Okay, you give us your mission systems, we give you our mission systems," basically handing systems to the enemy. And then I made like a post like before Arsia defected, this is not okay. And then NPCs responded, and it got way out of control. And I'm like, oh wow, what have I done? Buys a lot of popcorn, sits back.
Look at this disaster. No, yeah, I think that's really interesting though, because, you know, on the one hand, obviously some of this stuff was probably being thought of by CCP already, but clearly they grabbed hold of what was happening by the player base and managed to weave that in to their ongoing narrative. So
I think it was just Delegate Zero trying to force the players to do something based on what the players were doing and having fun with it, and it turned into he used the ongoing storyline to do that, like, and I think it's actually really cool. I think lore and the world is one of the best content drivers, Neve.
So just to keep going, what happened this morning was that a Brutor Vanguard Marauder, Vargar, thank you, dropped a Sino beacon, and through it came
a high-sec capable Sino beacon.
Yeah, high-sec authorized. Yeah. That's actually a really good point, which is that today in the patch, it was noted that they added in an additional new item, which was this authorized high-security Sino beacon or whatever. And it does require Polaris 5 as a skill, which makes it a GM-only thing. This isn't something that players are going to get or something like that. But, you know, people were like, what is this thing for? And then today...
It makes me think there's more events coming forward.
I mean, obviously, I seriously doubt that they would go through all the effort to put in this new thing with the new, new models and new all that. Or actually, I guess it's not a new model, but this
especially since
an object
they've
just
had
for that.
Capital ships in high sec. Yeah, they've had capital ships in high sec before,
right?
But like, this makes it like they can do a oh my god, they're jumping in now kind of thing, as opposed to they move it to the sun and it warps in.
Right. This
so
is
they can really simulate that it's jumping in.
Right. Exactly. And there's records of it. So, and then speaking of which, so in jumps in 3 Naglfar class dreadnoughts piloted by Brutor Vanguard. Now, Brutor Vanguard
Right.
were major combatants during the Flotswen fighting, and they are actually war clone Dust, old Dust 514 Corporation, which is something that we see a lot of actually recently in the story is CCP using these war clone organizations. War clone meaning usually non-capsuleer, not a starship pilot, but usually using some sort of immortality technology to make them into a foot soldier.
These Naglfars were probably not piloted by Well, actually, I think they were piloted by capsuleers, but the organization is predominantly a war clone one.
Right. And like I said, they were well known for the fighting on Flotswen 4 as well. So they've been invested pretty heavily into this. They also are credited for the attack on that sprung the two criminals from the Theology Council. So these are both of these attacks are credited to the Brutor Vanguard. And interestingly enough, the Republic itself has denounced or has refused to take credit for the claim or for the attack and says it's not them.
I mean, they technically said that about the Elder Fleet too, right?
Well, that was also technically true. I mean, the Elder Fleet was kind of a secret operation even to a lot of the Minmatar at the time. That's a big thing about the Minmatar Republic is that their government probably has the least control over itself. And so the idea of having an entire rogue agency perform an action without the benefit of the Republic fleet. It's noteworthy that there was no Republic fleet equipment.
It's not the first time.
It isn't the first time, no. Artificer attacked Galente space, for example.
Not Artificer, Corzor.
Yeah, Corzor. You're right. Yeah, that's right. Dorian Corzor.
No, it was Kador, not Corzor. It was Kador. It was definitely Kador. Urium Kador.
Kador. That's right. Thank you. Okay, so the first news article about the Dreadnoughts that we got today reads, breaking news. Minmatar Dreadnoughts launch orbital bombardment of Tanoo 2. Naglfar-class Dreadnoughts of the Minmatar Republic's Brutor Vanguard has been reported carrying out orbital bombardment of targets on Tanoo 2, the capital planet of Ammatar Mandate and Artificer-controlled derelict region. Multiple Dreadnoughts are reportedly in low orbit on Tanoo 2 and are attempting to strike at locations in the vicinity of planetary capital Tor Amat, threatening the Consulate Palace, capital spaceport, and numerous vital installations. Communications with Tanoo 2 are confused, but planetary defenses are said to be holding with installation shields and counter-ballistic weapons disrupting incoming fire. Ammatar fleet units are scrambling to respond in an attack that appears to bypass system defenses and achieve total surprise. The attack follows an earlier raid on the Inus Ilix Theology Council station that appears to have been aimed at seizing the Khanid warlord Alar Chakade and notorious slaver Orlan Zashev from Theology Council custody. The scope will continue to report on this developing story. And then finally, it posts, Minmatar Dreadnoughts attempting assault on Tanoo 2 destroyed. The squadron of Brutor Vanguard Dreadnoughts that attempted the orbital bombardment of targets on Tanoo 2 has been destroyed by the Ammatar fleet forces, aided by loyalist capsuleers, according to reports from the Ammatar Certified News. Ammatar Mandate authorities are maintaining...
Amar Certified News?
Sorry. Ammatar Mandate authorities are maintaining a state of emergency across Tanoo 2, but report only minor damage to the periphery of the planetary capital of Tor Amat. The Minmatar Republic has issued a firm disavowal of the actions of the Brutor Vanguard forces involved in the attack of Tanoo 2 and an earlier raid on the Inus Ilix Theology Council station. The Brutor Tribe Council and Vanguard Command have also disavowed involvements in the attacks. Imperial authorities are remaining tight-lipped on the immediate aftermath, but these incidents are sure to feature in the deliberations of the upcoming Privy Council meetings on Amar Prime. Amar and Minmatar fleets are both on high alert following the incident, but are clearly exercising restraint until the confused circumstances of these attacks are clarified. Concord has offered its assistance to the Amar Empire's investigation and urged continued restraint by all parties.
It's also worth noting that one of the Naglfars dropped basically ship logs that the role players are after, and I think that currently somebody posted on the forums declaring intent to turn it over to Electus Matari. So
correct. Yep. Actually, hold on. Let me pull that up real quick.
It seems if things go according to plan.
Hey, sorry about that. Seems it doesn't like me to look up new things. You there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have it here exactly, but yes, there somebody no, Reload.
I have it in front of me. Yeah, it's Reload.
Reload, the guy who does all the Ezekiel guide to whatever's. He scooped. So these items, I actually looked them up. The items that they dropped are normal lore items. These aren't new things that were put in, but they're actually used in 2 other missions. But it's encoded data transmission and encrypted ship logs. They were in 2 of the 3 Dreadnoughts, and they did drop, and were apparently picked up by Reload to be brought to Electus Matari. Has it happened yet? He said it won't. It'll happen later.
Not yet. He's basically using it to bait people to come after him.
That's right. He's saying for people to war deck the group. He's in a few days he will be attempting to transport this stuff. It's interesting though, because like rather than creating a new object to drop in the same way as like we saw with like the time-based experiment, the guy dropped the corrupted trinary data relics or whatever. This is, as I said, like one of them is from like the SOE Epic arc, and the other one is from some level 4 mission or something like that. So, so it'll be hard for like I wonder if CCP could even like track this particular encrypted ship log or something like that, or if this is just a fun thing.
What it's worth, it's definitely possible for them to flag a specific item for them to track that specific item, because that's what they did when they turned Orlan Zashev over to the players. They gave them an item that's Khanid Commander, like one of the personnel items.
Oh, yeah.
But Delegate Zero said that specific one, he was watching it, so he would know exactly what happened to it. So it's entirely possible that the same is true for these items.
Have we heard anything
from
Delegate Zero about today?
He hasn't said a word on the RP server, at least.
Oof. All right. Well,
usually he turns up before something happens. He'll like make a few like sarcastic posts, and then all of a sudden something's on fire.
So it is worth noting that we are basically within like a week maybe of getting the next Quadrant trailer, and we would normally expect something like a fan fest to happen right about now, which would usher in some big new thing. And all of the teases, all of the everything that CCP's provided recently has pointed to the fact that there's some big new thing coming. And so this really seems to be a piece of that new story. Like this, so this story has been kind of building up slowly in the background, where only people like you and people that pay attention to the world news and are actively seeking to engage with it even know it about. But CCP today made it a point to be like, hey, everybody, pay attention. It's time to pay attention. So,
yes. And like one of the biggest points on my CSM platform is lore visibility, and a lot of this stuff is incredibly cool and incredibly fun to interact with. You get good fights, you get drama, you get storytelling, you meet cool people, and a lot of people just don't know what happens.
Right. So I guess the moral of the story here is that while it may look like all that happened was a couple of Dreadnoughts and NPC actors like showed up to get shot at, it actually is part of a much longer chain of events that is worth looking into and worth paying attention to. And I believe that if anything today has demonstrated that it's only going to be increasingly interesting as time moves on, especially since we've seen the sort of stuff that we've seen on Singularity today, which we can talk about as well. Do we have anything else about this lore event, the various actors that are involved with it, before we move on to that, though?
The main things to mention is that Tanoo is an incredibly hot RP spot. There is a Fortizar over the capital planet held by a major Amar alliance, Kimi Harar. Ticker is Lumen. that stuff just keeps happening to them, right? The Bloody Dreadnoughts hit their Fortizar multiple separate occasions. There's been war, but it was a war with a few decent battles for high sec in Tanoo, with Ashra Khan attacked the Lumen Fort. Tanoo is popping sometimes when storylines are flaring up. So it's definitely a place to watch.
Very cool. And I apologize for it cutting out. Discord seems to be having some interesting issues when I'm trying to load something else at the same time, unfortunately. But I wanted to pull up, I tweeted this morning, or this afternoon, all of the things that I noted about this event. So just in case, I'll go through them one more time. First, the attack occurred just after the raid at a different facility in Innis Ilix, which killed several paladins and may be related to the prisoner's Khanid warlord Ala Chekad, which we talked about. We talked about the fact that
Paladins being a theology council, paladins, not the Marauder.
Correct. Alar was recently moved. We talked about that. The Amar Empress was just recently visiting there for inspections. We talked about that. Chakade was a warlord attacking Floswin prior to being suddenly arrested by the Theology Council. Talked about that.
Tetramon.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. Thank you. My tweets are wrong. That's all right. You should have corrected me then. And then Chakade was accused of taking part in the firebomb attacks, which we talked about. The Black Daggers.
Firebomb attacks on Arsia's family home.
The other thing that was thrown out there today was that yesterday there was a murder at Great Karavasari. You want to pronounce that for me and tell me what it is? The murder yesterday? Caravanserai?
Oh, the Unmatar, the let me pull it up.
Because it says, great Caravanserai killing brings count of Black Dagger murders to 5, following 3 Carousel officers killed last week. So that means 4 people have been killed involving these Black Daggers.
Yeah, Caravanserai.
Yeah. So what is that?
So there were a couple of individuals killed a couple months back on Matari on the continent of Mikramura, I think, which is the northern cold continent, basically. Notable for a lot of Sebiester, which is one of the Matari tribes living there in the cold environment. There are a couple murders. Black daggers were the instrument of the assault weapon, basically, and it ties back to the threat that Chakade made about literally murdering Minmatar with black daggers, and all of a sudden, a couple of Minmatar were murdered with black daggers, and we just had a handful more of Cruiseril, which is another Minmatar tribe, Cruiseril leaders who were killed with this weapon that is once again a symbol in Amar. In the Amar religion, that means if you stab somebody with a black dagger, you're basically marking them to be damned and sending their souls to eternal damnation. So it ties back to the threat that Chakade made against Minmatar. So people think it's either something tied to Chakade or a false flag against him.
So I keep seeing references to this, but what is the Great Caravanserai?
I don't know.
All right, well, I'm gonna have to look into it because I see a note from 2009. Caravanserai organized in Molten Heath. So we'll probably have to look into that. It's a term involving historically it means an inn with a central courtyard.
It's from Chronicle cover stories.
There's a question. What if it's a pink
dagger? The Chronicle
dagger?
Cover stories, yes.
If it's a pink dagger, do they not get damned?
That has nothing to do. Yeah, they get candy if it's a pink dagger.
They go to Hello
I just
Kitty
made
Online.
that up.
All right,
Yes, they go to the Sanrio store.
fair enough. All right, so
But it's the Chronicle cover stories. That mentions the Great Caravansary.
all right.
There
So
you go.
clearly, there's a lot more going on, and as I mentioned earlier, there's also things going on the Caldari side, in particular when it comes to the Grissus. Looks like follow up. There's been a lot of unrest in the state recently, which was punctuated in an attack on the Jita 44 mining center in around New Year's, and so it seems like there's been a massive crackdown, in particularly targeting the Grissus Empire or Grissus pirates. So we'll just have to see how that develops too. CCP is clearly putting up something where the next big thing can happen. And while we don't know necessarily what exactly is going to happen, it's clear that tensions are at an all-time high, and that the empires, while they are clearly bothered by the Triglavian invasions and the formation of Poshvin, they still have their own affairs in order. I think that it is worth noting that all of this lore stuff, so basically about 3 years ago, around the time that they were originally going to be launching Project Nova, they started up some new lore events and introduced some new characters, including Cassia Valkenir, which is, by the way, Cassia Valkenir is also Cassia Valkenir is also related to the Vindication Wars.
Cassia Valkenir is a Ammatar who is the clan cousin of the current Nefantar clan chief. So when the Elder Fleet attacked and a lot of the unloyal Ammatar defected, went to the Republic and reformed the Nefantar tribe, part of Cassia Valkenir's family left and part stayed. Cassia Valkenir performed admirably in the Vindication Wars and kept the loyal parts of her family safe because she was so highly regarded. But Elika Valkenir left and became the clan chief, the tribe chief of the Nefantar tribe. So Cassia Valkenir is a big Ammatar Navy veteran who now works for Concord, heading Edencom. Heading Aegis, right?
Yeah.
And Elika Valkenir is the tribe chief of the Nefantar tribe in the Republic. So it's like a family that half is loyal to the Amar and half is loyal to the Minmatar.
Right. Well, but my point is that so that slaver that was part of this whole thing, he
Zashev
was known, or his crimes happened during the Vindication Wars, which is when Cassia Valkenir was fighting on the not Minmatar side. It's worth noting.
On the Ammatar side, yeah.
Yeah. So
she's a veteran of the Ammatar fleet.
Right. So it's arguably she was on the quote unquote wrong side of that conflict. So it's going to be interesting. A lot of these characters all got introduced at roughly the same time, and it was obvious that at least some of it was to be set up for the shooter that they were working on, which of course was delayed. And I personally believe that a lot of this time, the invasion cycle, etc., CCP used this opportunity to lay down a lot more of the groundwork for the planetary side of things, the war clone side of things. That's why we've seen so much involving planets and planetary issues when it comes to the lore, even though obviously we're still just doing stuff in space.
You saw a lot with planets in most of the more recent era events, like Skarkon had all kinds of stuff happening on the planets up till and after it was invaded by the Triglavians. Kaha, the Becca, basically any event that happened, there's probably some stuff happening on the planets.
Yeah, so
to correlate with the in-space stuff. The in-space stuff usually affects what happens on the planets.
I'm actually
so your gameplay matters.
That's true. I'm going to read this this article from today. It says, Triglavian-occupied planets seeing increased conflict between clades and resistant forces. Poshvin, Edencom intelligence and Concord conflict monitors have reported a significant uptick in planetary combat operations across the Triglavian-occupied territories of Poshvin. The situations on Skarkon 2 continues to cause concern as Svarog clade forces clash with a renewed series of landings by forces loyal to Veles clade. Skarkon's tribal resistance army under the control of Valkyr General Krill Ifrit also continues to hold out, even launching strikes on war clones and criminals alleged to be collaborating with the Svarog clade occupational forces. Veles clade itself has had to contend with incursions on its Vale planetary holdings by Perun clade forces reportedly drawn from the populations of Como and Sekenta. Resistance efforts by Caldari forces in Como and Sekenta are believed to be focused on disrupting Perun clade bioadaptation efforts on the basis that claims that they are, quote, protective measures, end quote, are for a cover of wholesale indoctrination of planetary populations into labor and military forces. Svarog clade's own forces are apparently concentrating on consolidation within the systems that it controls, with surveillance suggesting massive industrial works are underway on a number of barren, terrestrial, and storm planets within Svarog. The Svarog border systems in Uranichi is reportedly a particular focus for widespread industry and military activity by the clade. Little has been heard from the relatively heavily populated worlds of Uranichi since Svarog forces carried out a series of sweeping assaults against Caldari resistance forces. Signs of extensive, possibly accelerated changes to the biosphere of Uranichi 4 and 5 have been accompanied by reports of extraordinarily high energy readings from the locations of cities on those planets. Independent scientists have suggested that readings are high enough to imply the use of antimatter reactors operating without the shielding that would normally be used in planetary atmospheres. So this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, it shows that there's a lot of stuff going on the planets, which is just what we were talking about. But this is actually the very first real concrete evidence that we have, besides just like rats shooting each other, of the clades coming into open conflict with each other. So the various Triglavian clades do not necessarily get along, but they have been held together for some time by a group called the Convocation of Triglav Outside of the Struggle, which works with a detached executive troika known as Zoria Triglav. And historically, we've seen these three forces, these three clades, work together, both in the Abyss and in invasions, at least, somewhat together. But now that we are seeing Poshvin, apparently as it says in one of the records, it says the flow shall cleave and proving begin anew in the ancient domains. So now that each of the Triglav inside of the struggle have been given their own territory, they are actually apparently going into each other's territory and causing disruption. So it's not like they're aiding each other.
Yeah. I have things to say about that. Basically,
Sure.
every large faction of Evon Land has infighting, and the Triglavians are no exception. The clades have ideological differences on a number of issues, and Svarog, or however you pronounce it, Svarog is they're the fighty guys. They fight. They're very, very grr. And it's not surprising that they'd be at odds in certain respects with Perun, who I see as very practical, and Velez, who I see as kind of like the fluffy, closest thing to nice clade. Would you agree with those assessments of the three clades?
So, from my understanding, the Veles clade are more of the engineers. It says the Veles clade seems to be made. Hold on, let's see. Made up of many subclades and is seemingly very strong in the fields of heavy space industry, communications technology, and high energy exotic particle physics. Although it is true that the Veles clade were most famously, they were the ones that originally believed that the rogue drones should be worked with, whereas the Svarog clade felt that the rogue drones should just be destroyed.
So the reason why I say they're like the fluffy clade is both because they do seem to tend towards diplomacy, like working with the rogue drones, and also like they tend to veer on the side of not wiping out people, like whereas like the Svarg, whatever, they took Rarivas, and like the populations went gone.
That's true.
The Velas took Vale, and the people are more or less okay, right? I that pretty much it implies to me that um, living in the Clade Sarvog is going to be a lot worse for a lot more people than living under Clade Velas, you know.
That's a good point. Velas is doing more bioadaptation, whereas Svarog is doing more like just accumulating resources, basically, it seems.
So like a lot of the early articles said like, oh, Triglavians seem to react erratically and unpredictably to people, and it's just we didn't yet understand the differences between the three clades, where one clade will kill the people, one clade goes out of its way not to kill people, and one clade just does what seems to make sense and be practical in the moment.
That's right. So the Perun clade are accomplished space-time mechanics, high impulse and FTL engine construction, and electronic systems. And it also says that the Perun clade show a greater degree of strategic leadership of the collective than the other two. And Svarog are known for strength in combat vessel construction, the development of novel weapon systems, and the extensive use of bioadaptive mutaplasmic technology. I believe that Velas are also known to be the big constructors. So like the big, massive, the mega structures that they've been building, and the projects involving, being able to construct things like the everything from the Dreadnoughts and the World Arcs to the Porvitium transmuters, the stellar observatories inside of the Triglavian-controlled domains. I believe that was Velas technology that was being used.
The other thing that I want to make a point of is Skarkon has the worst luck in the entire universe.
It's awful.
Right? Like, for the entire history of Eve, it's just Skarkon just gets dunked on. Like throughout all the stuff that happened with the angels throughout the years, and then to cap it off recently in the invasions, it gets invaded not once but twice. Like the Trigs really wanted it so much that after failing they came back and they took it, and it was the first Minmatar system to fall. And Kreerald is very very sparsely populated. Skarkon was not so much. So it's a fitting fate for the most unlucky planet in the universe.
Sorry, not sorry. So I remember during that time, you guys, the Edencom guys, had just yeah, so you just taken the very first time that anybody, basically in invasions, it started out at the neutral state, and then basically if one side won, then if it could proceed, then it would proceed to the next stage for that person, and if they completed that, then it locked in, right? So for the Triglavians, we went to first and second liminality, and then it locked into third liminality. For
final
Edencom, yeah, final liminality. For Edencom, it was like bulwark.
It was redoubt,
bulwark, and then fortress, right? Cool.
Fortress, yeah.
So, but it was known that if one side brought it to their team, to their side, started working it in their direction, it could, in theory, be brought back to the other side, and then it would just proceed to that side's progression and not go back to neutral. And we kind of knew this. CCP told us this. And I remember the Triglavian Collective had basically decided that this was impossible, that they had attempted it to pull it back a redoubt going into a fortress. And it was just like, it can't be done. And lo and behold, here comes Edencom, like, nah, screw that. You don't own anything until you own it. And they took back a system that was
Arshat went to liminality, and then Strebog, who was pushing it, left. And we just moved in and we're like, okay, we have failed to push 3 separate systems from liminality back to redoubt, but we figured out how to do it, and we did it.
And then as soon as I remember you were celebrating that on Twitter, and then as soon as you started celebrating it, ScarCon went active.
No, as soon as I started celebrating it, that's when Niarja popped.
Was it Niarja? No, I thought it was
That was
ScarCon. I thought we talked ScarCon right after that.
Immediately after Arshat was Niarja.
Okay,
And
well, then
all of Lux Invicta was tired as hell from doing an all-nighter for like we all did an all-nighter for Arshat. And then Niarja popped and we're like, we're going to go blow our brains out now. Bye.
See, I thought I stole ScarCon during that time, but okay, whatever. Fine.
No, you got Niarja during that time.
Whoopsie.
Immediately after Arshat was Niarja.
There's a lot that went into making Niarja happen. Let's just say that I had the smallest piece to play on that one. But I did know that as soon as ScarCon went liminal, I know that you guys made a big point to make sure that none of the invasions were successful in Minmatar space. And ScarCon is an incredibly important system to Empyrean Age and elsewhere.
ScarCon was pretty intense. Like they dropped a carrier. We killed the carrier. Everybody lost all of their shit. And it happened over days. Like an NPC popped into the system and started insulting us. Cecily Shook is my favorite NPC. She's the Sekal bounty hunter that sold Orlan Zashev to the Amar. But she was around in ScarCon. And we fought over ScarCon. We tried to push ScarCon back. We thought about doing an all-nighter and trying to flip it from liminality, but not enough people were ready because it wasn't a weekend like Arshat was.
Yeah.
Arshat was a weekend. And if it was a weekend, we would have all-nightered and tried to push it back. But we just couldn't do it, and Triglavians locked it in the next day. And after ScarCon went to liminality, we did a big escort mission where we brought a freighter from High Sec. We jumped it gate to gate with a giant escort fleet, brought it into ScarCon, and moved it from planet to planet to evacuate people. Delegate Zero started spawning Triglavians on us, and the NPCs came back, and it was a really cool event there. And that kind of stuff happens. Like if you're going to run something, post on the forums, and sometimes CCP shows up.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think that's about all that we need to cover about what's going on right now. We will keep an eye on it, and I will drag you on here anytime that we have more to talk about. But you also, I mean, I feel like we shouldn't wrap any of this up without pointing out that you are a streamer that are streaming frequently fleets on behalf of your organization, and including, you know, if any of these kinds of RP events come up, you're a good person to go to directly, correct?
Yeah. I stream 2 or 3 times a week on average. I do PvP, usually in this time zone. And I would feel free to plug me. The channel is, I'll plug me. I'm kind of a big deal, you know. The channel is Baleful Dysnomia, if you don't know. I guess I'll link it in chat. Oh, somebody linked it.
Yeah, it's been linked in chat, and I will also link it in the YouTube channel or YouTube video when we get there. It'll be in the doobly-doo down below.
I'm also running for CSM.
Good point, which means that I'll have you on as early as next week, I think. Or do we already have this one scheduled? I can't remember now.
Thursday, right?
Thursday. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so Thursday we're going to do our CSM interview. Awesome. You might actually be the first interview too, if I think about it, if I remember correctly.
I'm also your first repeat guest.
Oh, well, I mean,
no.
We know you're a go-to person, especially when it comes to this sort of stuff, especially the Minmatar lore, which is something I'm by far the weakest on.
Arsia was originally Amar, and then she defected. But Amar and Minmatar have been the two sides that I found really interesting from the get-go. I can talk a little bit about the Caldari and the Galente. And in the Galente, I find the Jin Mei culture really, really interesting because it has this really unique caste system. And I find some of the mega corporations on the Caldari side kind of interesting, but I really like the Minmatar and I really like the Amara and the conflict between them because it's just like a really interesting dynamic to me.
They've definitely, I feel like that that side of things has had a lot more work and given into it over time. But either way, I think that we should probably talk about the Caldari stuff later. I still feel like that story is still cooking. I don't really have enough meat to bite onto yet. So instead, why don't we jump on? I'm actually on Singularity right now, right here. And this is the new Jita 44 station interior. I don't know if you've seen this yet, Arsia.
Oh no, I haven't.
Uriel posted some screenshots of this thing, but it is gorgeous, and it's 360 degrees. It's up, it's down, it's in all different directions.
Oh wow!
And in fact, I'll even undock and dock again because even the docking animation's really cool. So let me. Of course, here's the outside of Jita still. I don't think that this has been changed very much at all.
Docking permission requested.
If I dock again...
Accepted.
Oh! Accidentally covered up Arsia with my overview. Whoopsie!
It's alright.
So you can see, like, you fly up, and then the panels come up around you, and like steam shoots up, and it's like, all right, now you're here. I think it's really cool. You can see like this is port 21.
Looks like you're in the middle of like a docking place in like a city. Like it reminds me of Coruscant from Star Wars, kind of. It's just like this like shady city.
Wretched Hive.
Every city in the EVE universe is shady.
Yep. So, but a whole bunch of new stuff. We have the industry changes today, which we've been talking about quite a bit. It'll be interesting to see how that affects the market over time. Right now, I will say that if you have built battleships or battlecruisers, you may want to consider selling in Jita right now. But I have, let's see, let me pull up my notes. Okay, so these are the stuff that came on Sissy today. And I've kind of divided it into three different types of things. There is new Aegis, i.e. Edencom stuff. There is new Rogue Drone stuff. And there are new EOM rats, which is the Equilibrium of Mankind. Do you know anything about the EOM off the top of your head?
Yeah. So the EOM is basically a lesser known pirate faction that is they're like the crazy version of SOE, where they think that like behind the Eve Gate is some like kill everybody here and start anew, and they are the group that used that Titan to bomb the planet. Was that Minar?
I'm not sure, but Equilibrium of Mankind basically believe that effectively all people should be wiped out, like that the universe should just be given back to God, effectively. So, did I lose you?
No,
Okay.
I'm just pulling up
Got it.
Equilibrium of Mankind. What planet was that?
I have no idea. That's what I got you for. No, so there's a whole bunch of new rats on Singularity, including a Purifying Lord and a Sacred Assassin. It says specifically a radical and heretical Ammar sect dedicated to the apocalyptic religious ideology. The EOM can be found across New Eden, attempting to accomplish their supposedly divine mission of annihilating the human race within the cluster and leaving it to God alone. So it looks like, especially if you read the patch or the other like strings and stuff, it seems like
Reichard 5.
There you
Or
go.
Shard 5 is the planet that the Equilibrium of Mankind bombed with the Titan.
So the Equilibrium of Mankind have these rogue capital shipyards, and they have something else. Oh, the Sino beacons. So this looks like it's going to be the new event sites. So there's some sort of event involving these EOM. There are 2 different difficulty of events sites. You get paid, or there are tasks like for the agency to go into these sites and either kill the rats or hack. So there's hacking sites and there's killing sites, and it is very likely that this is related to Capsuleer Day, which is the anniversary of EVE Online. Normally, sorry.
No, go ahead. Finish.
Normally, Capsuleer Day is a holiday that just has a giveaway, like you log in rewards. But there has been, like, I think Conscious Interruption was an event for 1 year, so this might be a way for them to celebrate Capsuleer Day. Go on.
I think that the EOM is a pirate faction that has been needing a lot of love for a really long time. They're a really interesting faction that they don't really get much representation in the game. There's a few missions where you fight EOM, and they're like they're Mars ships with blasters, basically, with hybrids. But there's a few there's a few like stories, chronicles, and lore bits that they have about them, but like they don't have like a slot on like the faction standing page, and they don't get much love. Like every other pirate faction gets like a holiday kind of thing, like, ooh, the Blood Raiders for Halloween and the Garistas get Easter, and they call them something different to make them fit in the universe. But EOM gets overlooked so much. They don't have any space they spawn in normally. They don't have a region. I would love if there were some like EOM NPC stations over in like the drone lands, which needs NPC stations somewhere. Like a lot of other nullsec have like NPC constellations around. Drone lands should get some EOM stations, I think.
Well, it appears as if the EOM have a underground network of rogue capital shipyards and stolen Sino beacons to allow them to move within Empire territory. And there's mention about their dreads, although we don't see any of those in the actual like stats or anything.
Yeah.
That seems to be what they are building towards. So
there is the lore where they hit the planet with the Titans, so they have capitals and they have the ability to get them into the Empire. So that makes a lot of sense. It's a callback to that event, I think, where they used the Titan to bomb a planet. If they're gonna have EOM trying to sign up something into HiSec, yay!
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep, and this is also happening right at the same time, as I said, of Capsuleer Day, which we also get a bunch of where is it? Oh no, did I not copy it over? There is a lot of stuff that was added for Capsuleer Day as well, including new skins and new clothing and such. So I believe it is very possible that the EOM would relate to that. And then Capsuleer Day is normally when? That'd be like...
What's the anniversary of EVE? Is it...
I'm trying to remember. May 5th. Yeah. Valamir is saying May 5th. I think that might be
May
correct.
6th.
May 6th. Okay, there you go.
That's the initial release of EVE is May 6th.
Right.
Maybe it's May 5th.
So the next thing that we see is all of this Aegis stuff. And I don't think that the Aegis stuff is related to this event, because Aegis and EOM don't necessarily seem like the kind of people that would work together. But
well, they might be fighting the EOM. Maybe it's something like
it's very possible.
Blood Raider event where you could fight the Blood Raiders or fight Serum.
It's possible, but I have a different theory. This has by far got some of the most interesting stuff, including this right here. Aegis Proximity Mine. Aegis Security has sown a number of proximity mines throughout the facilities that they guard. These mines are very dangerous and should be avoided at all cost. And we also have the... where is it? Aegis Security Scanner. Aegis Security has developed scanning technologies that are capable of detecting and disrupting the cloaking fields of intruders attempting to use stealth to penetrate their facilities. It'd be wise to give these scanners a wide berth.
Maybe this is finally something they're adding that will utilize the standings we got fighting for Edencom.
Maybe, but so,
I'm not bitter.
You're absolutely you have reason to be, but that's a whole other topic. But so this is really interesting because we know that CCP has teased that this summer, so like during this next quadrant, one of the things that we should be getting is new intelligence tools, and specifically, they've been hinting at or directly saying that they are going after cloaky campers, and so this structure first showed up on Sissy, and people were looking at it as this anti-cloaking device, and people have suspected that that's what this was, but obviously this looks like it's part of a site as opposed to a tool that's being used by players. But this might allow people to introduce the concept.
I wonder if maybe it's something to deal with cookie campers in like a low second NPC note where you don't get to anchor shit yourself.
Possibly. There was a theory that they might be deploying it for, like, if they have an event happening, then they might use this, and then once the tech has been proven out, then they can give the player deployable version of it. Yes, there's there's clearly a facility that they expect you to be cloaked with that involves proximity mines, scanners, and encrypted vaults, but it's all controlled by Aegis.
A lot of new features are tested during these holiday events. Remember, filaments were a Christmas thing, right? And then we got filaments, and that could definitely be the case.
But I actually believe that if I could make a prediction about this, and I could be wrong, this could be just another event. It could be tied into the Aegis security scanned cloud information. That seems interesting too. This could be tied into, the EOM stuff. But I actually think that if we look at the other things that have been added, we will see that there's a third thing happening, and maybe these are related. So there is a bunch of new rogue drone stuff, including a bunch of infested capital parts, rogue drone nurseries, rogue drone nursery pods, which also look really, really weird. And overmine nests, growth structures, and foragers that are specifically in the description say that they're responding to things involving the not this one, but there's some of these are saying that they're responding to the swarm or something happening to the nest. Interestingly enough, these descriptions are the description of the independent rogue drones inside of Poshfin, which leads me to believe
the rogue drone fob.
Yeah, so Poshfin has actually had these new rogue drone sites added as part of its formation, right? So we have tier 0, 1, and 2 sites for both Edencom and Triglavian. So we have, things like emerging conduit, minor conduit, major conduit. Or for Edencom, you have the staging area or the forward base, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there's actually a bunch of rogue drone sites and drifter sites inside of Poshfin as well that only spawn or that spawn when those when either connection to drone lands or connection to wormhole space is connected to Poshfin. And so I actually think that this is building up new stuff in Poshfin. So these rogue drone sites seem to be, or this new rogue drone stuff, including the capital rogue drones, this escalation of rogue drone forces, seem to be inside of Poshfin, which means I think that the Edencom stuff that we're seeing, I actually don't think that we're going to see this in Poshfin. I would like it if these new Edencom sites are going to be put inside of the Edencom fortresses in K-Space.
Yeah.
So now if you go into the fortresses, you'll be able to break into Edencom stuff and mess with them there. And so there'll be new content in both Poshfin and Edencom fortresses. And then both of those are separate, distinct, and somewhat new sites going forward, and they're not part of the EOM event. That's what I actually think we're looking at.
That's a possibility, yeah. Because right now Eden Fortress have nothing. But
Oh,
like the
hold on.
thing is, if you put it,
Hold it.
Immortal.
Pookglyphs just followed the stream. Thank you for joining us. Don't want you to. Every time somebody follows, it kind of talks over. It goes over you, and I haven't figured out how to. Streamlabs OBS, I can just mute it really quick, but normal OBS, I don't have that anymore. So, either way, proceed.
yeah. Well, I guess there's flashpoints in fortresses sometimes, but right now fortresses are just kind of like, yay. Right.
Right. Yeah. So the old sites do spawn in minor victories and fortresses, but overall there aren't, like, nobody talks
Not much
about
going
going
on.
to fortresses to like do something.
I
as a
gotta go to
Triglavian.
Sasta. Yeah.
So
I mean, I made that meme called Dingleven, which is all the 52 Edencom fortresses in the shape of like a middle finger, and it's like, oh, the Edencom only region. Right.
I've always said that I think that what CCP should have done afterwards to make it worse for pro-Triglavian people is fortify all systems 1.0 or higher, just to make it so that anyone who's pro-Triglavian has that much of a problem just moving around in high sec. But I guess thankfully
I
that
think
wasn't
what should have
listened to.
happened was just don't have the standings requirements on the Pochven gate, so we can keep fighting you guys.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point. I wonder whether or
Or
not.
have it also react to like Edencom standings either under the guise of, wow, you fought against us hard and you prove yourself, or Edencom's hacking the gates for its trusted capsulators. Right.
I do
keep
actually really
fighting.
like the idea of like I've wanted it so that Edencom can go into a border system and somehow win, which would unlock the gate to the inner systems. Like somebody could like work their way up into the home system, but the people, the pro-Triglavians could attempt to stop this effort at any time. But it would, like, I really think that the thing that Pochven was supposed to be, and I think that they missed it a little bit, is that Pochven was the opportunity to flip the script.
The power they would have. They would be.
Nabi, thank you. Well,
Immortal.
what I mean by that is, like, so up until this point, 1 second. Up until this point, all of the invasion was the Triglavians were invading Edencom, right? Like the Triglavians were taking, like the Edencom was just trying to preserve. Pochven changed that. So now in Pochven, the Triglavians are trying to hold, and the Edencom guys are the invaders. But I don't think that gameplay was given enough yet.
That gameplay wasn't given. We put structures in Pochven just like a lot of the Trig groups did, and we were getting ready to take the fight to the Triglavians, and then the region said no, right? But I think more so than anything, what's annoying is that once you have, with the Triglavian standings, you can travel between gates, which means you can like kill a drifter, jump, kill a drifter, jump, kill a drifter, and get good standings with not just Triglavians, but also with Edencom, thereby going around all of your consequences.
Right.
When we don't get any access to do exactly the same thing and fix like I'm not going to fix my trig standing because I like being enemies with them. But there's a lot of people who participated in the invasion on one side of another who want to ignore the rats in when they're hauling or when they're moving around now. And one side gets an easier way of working that debt off.
It's a good point. Yeah. So if you have +3 Edencom and -3 Trig, you would have to go into Pochven and just hope that the correct sites are there, and you can't move around, you can't trigger more things. But if you have 3.0 with the Trig, you can go around and exclusively kill rogue drones and drifters and slowly work off that debt. We actually have at least one person within the convocation who has done that, who had 3.0 with the Triglavians, and then subsequently ran fleets in Pochven and got themselves just barely positive with Edencom. So now they not only can travel in Poshvin, but they can also travel in Hisek without either side attacking them, which is it does take a lot of work, but is an incredible state to be in.
Yeah. And like the ability to jump gates means you can raise your standing a lot faster, because the way it calculates it is highest value rat per system per 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So if you can kill something in under 5 minutes and go to the next system, you can get another tick within a minute, as opposed to within waiting around for 5 minutes to go kill something else in the same system.
Yeah, especially since
And,
those sites are not always available. It's like
Yeah,
you could just
exactly.
you could use a filament and end up in a system that just doesn't have what you need, and you're like, okay, well, awesome.
And I mean, like, I guess the solution is to go to Caldari space, where there's a wormhole every other jump in the Pashan. But still, that's still jump. Is there a wormhole here? Scan all the anomalies. No wormhole. Jump next system. Okay, I found a wormhole. Jump. Go in. Kill one thing. It's gonna take you more than 5 minutes to find the different system wormhole, right?
That being
If you're
said,
going like 2 or 3 jumps.
That being said, one of the best ways of making ISK safely on Triglavian or rather, invasion content at this time tanks your Triglavian standings, because it's only killing Trig in Hisek. So,
Well, I would say the best thing of ISK is probably the World Arts. What
I said,
does
sorry,
take your
safely. I suggested safely. So in Hisek, the World Arts are
Poshvin
only
is
in
safe
Poshvin.
if you know what you're doing. Poshvin is safe. Like, Poshvin's safer than Hisek. If
Okay.
you know what you're doing.
Fair enough.
And I understand. Like in Hisek is scary. You don't know who's gonna gank you, right?
That's a solid point.
Just everybody's gonna gank you.
Good point. That's a good point. All right. Well, let's think. Is there anything else that I wanted to cover about today? There's been a lot to go on, and obviously I believe that this next couple of weeks we're going to have a lot more to talk about.
The power they would have. They would be
Woodland
Immortal.
Ranger, thank you for following.
Indubitably.
So Arsia, I assume that I'm going to be flagging you down multiple times in the next few weeks, probably. Hopefully you'll be available. And then in the meantime, people can check you out on your stream.
I am nothing if not magnanimous.
Is there anything else that we should cover today before we wrap it up for this Tuesday?
Not so much.
I think that's about it. I got all hail Arsia Elkin, heroine of the Mattar. You have some pretty good
Rubicon's
fans.
awesome.
Oh yeah.
He says that a lot, yeah. Arsia is in a very unique place where she is. She defected from the Empire, and she is loyal to the Republic in Electus Matari. And she's been a really, really fun character to play as. I have a lot of information that I've written about her, and I like my characters a lot.
Yeah,
And I've really enjoyed playing it.
I have always respected you and other Minmatar players' dedication to accuracy in your story.
Immortal.
Johnny Combo, how you doing? It just reminded me that I was recently thinking about some titles for myself, and I was like, yeah, Ashtarothi, the fanatic of faction warfare, the poser of Poshvin. That's all right.
I am the harbinger of Whelp.
There you go.
But because it's actually a callback to Empress Jamel when she said she's the harbinger of hope.
Right.
And I fly a lot of harbingers and I whelp them. So I'm the harbinger of whelp. Right. So it's kind of taking a shot. It's kind of like memeing on the old Empress.
I do like how you defected to the Minmatar, but you're like, no, I still love the harbinger.
I mean, Electus Matari, they some players that, or some characters that have ship restrictions of some sort. But overall, the Alliance is very on the side of practicality. Like, yes, we will shoot you with your own weapons, Amar, if they work.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
The main the main go-to doctrine for Electus Matari is usually Typhoons, for the record. But Harbinger is still one of my go-to solo small gang ships. And I love the Harbinger. Harbingers are actually what we flipped Arsia with, actually. We flipped it with a Harbinger fleet.
I'm going to look up to see for another group to raid. And hopefully that doesn't disrupt your communication while I do so. Oh, we're going
Nah, it's good.
we're
But
going to
yeah,
raid over to the Iron Bandit. What's up?
there's a lot of ships that Arsia flies. The Typhoon, the I actually have a number of kills with the Skybreaker Osprey Navy.
Real quick, there is a question. How do you tell your standings? Uh-oh, I just got rid of the Arsia post. That's unfortunate.
Oh no.
Oh, well, whatever. Your model's gone. All right, so if you pull up your character sheet like this and go to interactions and go to standings, then you should see the Triglavian Collective as one of the standings that you have. If you do not see the Triglavian Collective or Edencom in here, that means that you've never done anything with either of them, which give you .-01 with Trig and .00 with Edencom.
So if you shot them before the invasion event, you didn't get any standing one way or another. They didn't deduct standing for shooting them before the invasion. It was only after the invasion of Valamir. So if you didn't shoot them during the invasion, you won't show up.
And Grim asks,
What you can do, I was going to say, for people who didn't interact with the invasion, what you can do to make sure nobody shoots you in high sec is go to Poshven and kill one rogue drone, and then you're positive with both, if you had no prior interactions with either side.
Right. It's pretty easy. So the hardest part is as you get in, especially if you're going through a wormhole, there might be Trig on one side, Edencom on the other. You can't shoot any of them because that would cause a standing exchange. But if you can get past all of them and into Poshven, find a rogue drone, you kill just like even a single rogue drone, survive long enough to get the standing tick, and then Bob's your uncle, you're done. Edencom and Trig, neither side will attack you in high sec unless you do something
You don't
silly.
even have to survive. If you kill it, you'll get the tick even if you die.
Fair enough. Yeah, and you can also use Yeet filaments to do that as well. So it's actually pretty easy for somebody that did not tank their Triglavian standings or Edencom standings one way or another to fix it, so that way they just don't need to mess with it whatsoever. And I advise all haulers do that, especially since the Trig have a tendency to just show up randomly in systems that they are connected to with little to no warning.
Yeah, I dual boxed my hauler during the invasion. Get wrecked me.
My favorite part is like every couple of weeks or so, somebody's like, "Oh my god, they're invading perimeter again," because there's so many Triglavian systems.
There's
there.
So many. Yeah, the Kaldari state lost so many systems. Like the other empires did pretty well. Like during the invasion, the empires were just vying to get out of it in a better shape than the other empires, and the Kaldari state got wrecked.
They lost that fight.
Everybody else came out pretty good. Minmatar lost Skarkon and Krerald, but Krerald wasn't really important. Skarkon has a lot of people, so that kind of hurts. But one real loss and a couple minor victory losses.
State got wrecked. They got turned into Swiss cheese.
Yeah, Ammar lost 4 systems, including the one in the Mandate. But out of so many systems that the Ammar have by far the most systems. They lost basically nothing real big.
They won the most systems.
Yeah, they did. They had the most invasions because they have the most systems of any empire. They're a really large empire because they're imperialistic. The Galente, they had a few key losses. Like Vale has a lot of people on it. Vale is very, very populated. Like 3 temperate planets, I think, in Vale. But other than that, like Allah, Ignabaner, they're not the biggest losses. They're not like super impactful to the Federation, and they only had I think 4 or 5 losses themselves. So they didn't get devastated by any means. Kaldari State got wrecked.
Swiss cheese. Just total Swiss cheese. No, yeah. The so basically the Caldari NPCs, given the fact that for most of the invasion they had 0 EM resist, as the Caldari Tech 2 ships naturally do, made them incredibly vulnerable to the burst attacks of the Triglavians' secondary missiles. And the Ammar newt and tracking disruption just ended up being very good at dismantling Triglavian fleets. So unless there was active players helping defend the Caldari state, the state had a tough time holding. And likewise, even with support of Kybernauts, it was very difficult to push and take an Ammar system.
So, I have a story about one of the Caldari systems we actually defended. There was a system, it was a minor victory system called USI. And the entire kitchen sink public Edencom fleet was there for about 17 years. I'm being hyperbolic, but it was there for like an extensive period of time, pushing against no real organized resistance. And it still took like 2 days to take the system, whereas the Doctrine group was fighting against the Swarm fleet on the other side of the galaxy, trying to hold them off from a liminal system. And that was Koth, I think, the liminal system. And it just, the amount of time it took to push a Caldari system that had no opposition was absurd. And likewise, the Ammar rats were really strong, and a problem for the Kybernauts. It was the Galente and the Minmatar were generally balanced, and it's kind of weird. It's not weird, but it's definitely notable how game balance affects the story. Because Caldari rats were too weak, Caldari got wrecked. Ammar rats were OP, Ammar came out of it pretty good.
Right, but at the same time, it's also worth noting that like this is, in certain ways proper, right? This isn't like CCP let it happen
it's not
because
like a problem.
Yeah, they just weren't equally equipped to deal with the threat.
And like if you look at like the Ammar Empire having the fights, all the trouble with the drifters earlier, they were kind of already preparing since the drifter invasion to deal with like weird freaky aliens invading in a way that the other empires necessarily weren't, because the other empires didn't have their leader turned into jelly by drifters before, right? Because the drifters destroyed the Imperial Navy until Imperial armaments had to step up and like revitalize the Imperial Navy. Because the Imperial Navy used to have a problem with a lot of really old ships that just underperformed at battle, but that they've had in activity for like hundreds and hundreds of years. And Imperial armaments modernized the Imperial Navy. So where like the Republic fleet and the Federation Navy probably kind of kicked it into gear when the Triglavians first started invading in Chapter 1. The Ammar were probably preparing since the drifters.
That's a really good point. It's also worth noting that around the same time, the Ammar reorganized themselves, so that way all of the navies are in charge of their respective holders again.
That was a little more.
That was within
recent.
During the invasions. Yes.
That was after Katiz. That was the Pax E Kills Edo, which is the Peace of Two Swords. Everybody knows like the Pax Samaria is an in-game item, it's a book written by Emperor Heroine, which is like 3 emperors ago, about peace. Basically, he was like an Ammar softie. But he died. Then there was another death, and then Karsoth kind of stepped in until Jamel came back. Jamel was a warmonger, but she didn't she didn't warmonger to the extent that people expected with her being Sarum.
Right.
And that was also around when the Republic got the new Minmatar Shakur, who is also on a very anti-Ammar war-based platform. So like it was kind of weird to see the Republic and the Empire both having these very warlike leaders, and not so much jumping down each other's throats right away, right?
Right. Yeah. So this actually, basically, if you want to think about it, there's 3 beats going on right now. There was the Empyrean Age, Templar 1 beat, where those, the 2008, 2012 era, where you have, everything from Apocrypha and the formation of the wormholes all the way through Dust 514 and the idea of like clone soldiers. And then you have, in 2015, you have Rubicon, the release of the Drifters, Caroline Star, and the assault on the Ammarian homeworlds. And then 3 years ago, you see, or 3 or 4 years ago, you see the very first starts of the Triglavians collective leading into the invasion arc 3 years ago, where you start to see a lot more of these characters. A lot of these characters that you're seeing right now started their life in or around that time, or at least got a lot more to them during that time. As I've suggested, I think that CCP is building a lot of groundwork and building up these characters to be used later. And I think that all of this stuff, the industry changes coming, all of this other stuff that we see on Sissy, the lore event today, really does clearly point to the fact that while CCP has been working towards something for quite some time, they're getting very close to it being ready to be showed off. Like they've been teasing the fact that they're building towards something. Even the Caldari one of the things I noticed is that in the Caldari article, it specifically mentions the 3 different subgroups. The Caldari have also rearranged themselves into different political alignments. The mountain, ocean, and forest groups, of which one of them is PKN, the people who made the Jita overhaul. But there's 2 other alliances within the Caldari state. The Ammar obviously have reorganized their military. The Minmatar are having their own issues, and apparently Brutor Vanguards are attacking Ammatar Mandate. So it would seem as if a lot of the pieces that we've seen put in play over the last 2 to 3 years are getting very close to being paid off, or at least CCP is trying to remind us of all of it. It's trying to coalesce, I think.
Well, the thing with the Republic government is more recently, since the bombing of Matari by the Blood Raiders, emergency powers were given to Shakur by the Tribal Council, because remember, the Minmatar Republic, a lot of people don't know that it replaced its old parliamentary system based on population of the different tribes with a Tribal Council where the Minmatar is like the Prime Minister, and the 7 leaders of the tribes are the like Congress kind of body that deliberates.
Yeah, they have a republic democracy. They have a republic that has been thrust upon them by the Galente.
Yeah,
but then it's basically
not as a republic anymore. That parliament that they had made by the Galente is gone. Right?
Oh, okay. I thought it was just subservient.
Yeah. No, it's basically like completely gone, I think.
Fair enough. Didn't they just appoint a new prime minister?
They gave emergency powers to Shakur, right?
No, Shakur appointed somebody. I don't know. Obviously, there's more to pull apart. We'll dig into this more, but we can go on to this more and more and more. But we're coming up on the 2-hour mark, and my son is being very patient. So I think that we should probably wrap this up for now and address some of these things later. But there is one more thing I wanted to show off before I wrap things up for the day, which is another thing that was noticed on Singularity today. Hopefully this works. Have you seen the new tutorial stuff?
No.
Well, I've already messed it up because I've already done the tutorial on this character. Darn it. I can't show you it. Oh, well. So if you go on Singularity right now, there is if you start over the tutorial, you will see that Aura not only is now fully voiced but fully animated. That you'll be able.
Ashtarothi, you were right. The Parliament still has a role. Most of it's replaced by the Tribal Council, but it's reduced. You were correct that it still has a role.
I got one on Arsia on Minmatar lore.
You
can I get a
definitely
medal?
got. Yes.
I want a medal. All right, so we'll look into that more and talk about it another time. But there's new animations for Aura, and it really seems like it is just the beginning. The people that looked at it sees that there are hooks, so that way they could animate other avatars, maybe mission agents or whatnot. But for now, it's just Aura, which is really cool. I recommend going and checking out Uriel Antovici's, which is not how to pronounce his last name's Twitter. He's been showing off a lot of this stuff. And CSP Darwin tweeted that this is just the tip of the iceberg of what his team has been working on for the last year and a half. So, as I mentioned, as I've said over and over and over again today and previously, we are very much at the precipice, at the end of a journey that we're not even sure necessarily what all's there. But it's a very exciting time, and I'd pay very close attention in the weeks to come. Any final thoughts, Arsia?
Not really.
All right. Well, in that case, we will wrap things up and raid over to Iron Bandit. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope to have you on soon and regular. Check to make sure he's going. All right. And on that note, I've been Ashtarothi. I've been talking about playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012. I'm here to put Eve into context for you, my fellow Empyreans. Thank you so much for watching this, the first Tuesday episode of the Eve Universe podcast. And thank you, CCP and Arsia, for making sure that this first episode went really well and had plenty to talk about. We will be doing CSM interviews for the rest of the week, and we will be having a special shorter thing at the end of one of the interviews on Friday. But then next week we will also be having more shows, more interviews.
They would be immortal.
Moss Trooper 101, follow that dude's example and follow me if you haven't yet, and also go over and follow Arsia Elkin, and since Nth Dimensional's in here, go ahead and grab him too and follow him while you're at it if you haven't yet. I do want to say extra special thank you to the Great Notch, Cajun Vixen, Joachim for gifting a sub to Baleful, and Recon, all you guys and your subs. Thank you so much. You get all of the corporations involved in the current precursor crisis. Maybe not all of them. I feel like I need to correct myself now. It's kind of expanded outwards, but a lot of them. SOE, SOCT, Thucker, Rogue Drones, Drifters, many more. Let us celebrate all of the subs and the new Eve Universe show by showing us your clades! And Edencom logo for Arsia.
Subbing to make it to the EM logo. And the Minmatar, we come for our pizza.
There you go. Yeah. Man, I love it. I swear to God, my favorite thing about Twitch is the custom emotes.
The Minmatar logo made out of a pizza.
That is awesome.
You know, because like the joke is, we come for our people, but no, we come for our pizza. That's because I'm from New York, right?
Sub to Baleful for those awesome emotes. That's pretty incredible. All right, let's go and wrap it up. I've been Ashtarothi, and until next time, I'll see you in space.
Bring on the wrecking machine.
city.